Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today is yet another day to explore this wonderful opening response that doesn't even have a name against pawn to d4. What opening response am I talking about? This opening response where you begin with e6, which is called Howie's defense, and after white plays pawn to c4, the top played move, I recommended going pawn to c5 immediately. Still called the Howie's defense, by the way, not yet the Benoni as most of you think, but the game may transpose into the Benoni if white plays pawn to d5, the top played move, at least in the master's database. Now firstly, thanks to all of you guys who encouraged me to continue with this study that I started yesterday. I thought many people were not going to be interested, but to my surprise, I received these beautiful comments from some of you guys. Just look at all these. So today's video is kind of the second part of what I started yesterday, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy as always. So what's so special about this? You're going to win a lot of games in classical tournaments and in other serious games because most people don't just know what the hell is happening. For instance, after white plays the top played move pawn to d5, I said you don't want to close the position like what most people do, playing e5, which is also fine, but not suitable for this study. So others play e5, pawn to d6, f5, knight f6, just closing the position. I just don't find this to be appealing, especially when you're playing in a tournament. So just open up the position, and after cd, the top played move, this is when you go pawn to d6 now. Hold on, what's the plan here? After white plays any move, you want to put your dark squared bishop on f6, starting with bishop e7, and then on the next move you play bishop f6. Done. And how do you develop your king's knight? Watch. After white makes a move, you want to put your king's knight on g6, like this. Done. But what about the light squared bishop? Well, most of the times you're going to be trading off your light squared bishop on f3. For example, after white plays knight f3, you can just go bishop g4. By this time, you'll be pinning this knight to the queen, and should white try to harass your bishop, just get rid of it. And whatever. How do you develop your queen's knight? Well, you first of all put it on d7, intending to put it on e5. And where does your queen go? Well, it's up to you to put your queen on a5 or b6 or c7. For example, in case of any knight attacks, you can simply retreat your queen to c7 and you will be fine. Sometimes move order doesn't matter. Now, before developing your queen's knight, it's up to you to castle short if you want, or you just keep it simple. So this is the position that you will be having most of the times after white plays pawn to d5, and that's what I covered in my yesterday's video using practical examples. Right, so in today's study, we still continue with this system. After d4, you simply go pawn to e6 once again, and after pawn to c4, you go pawn to c5. Now wait, yes, we know the top played move is pawn to d5 in the master's database, or when you are playing this over the board in serious tournaments, but when it comes to online blitz and bullet chess, a lot of people don't just expect you to go pawn to c5. You see, online players are just having fun, making pre-moves that don't even make sense. That's why you see that the top played move in the Lichess database after you play pawn to c5 is knight c3. Alright. So what do you do whenever you see this crap? Look, the whole purpose of playing pawn to c5, given a chance, is to take white's d-pawn, just like we do in the Sicilian defense. And after queen takes d4, quick question, which knight would you develop first in this position? Is it the king's knight or the queen's knight? Well, it is the queen's knight. Why? Because it comes with tempo attacking the queen. And here the top played move that you're going to see is queen d1, because I mean, what else can white do? Anyways, and now this is when you play knight f6 if you want, but you see, there are so many ways to kill a rat. I don't want you guys to be memorizing stuff. The next move you want to play here is bishop b4, or probably any move that makes a lot of sense. Why bishop b4 out of everything? Because you just want to take on c3 and mess up white's pawn structure on the queen side. Bingo. For example, if they play the top played move knight f3 for some reason, this is when you're going to take on c3 like this. Look at this bad pawn structure. It may not make sense this time, but it will in the end game. The main line is to go knight f6, and this is where you will see most of your opponents pinning you like this, pinning your knight. There are two options that you can try here. A standard move is pawn to h6. If bishop h4, you can even go pawn to g5. But you know what? I like this move, queen a5, asking white to mess up my pawn structure on the king side because I want to start attacking along this file. You can see that the eval bar hasn't changed. If anything, Stockfish says this is the main line and black has an advantage. So after bishop takes, you just take back with your g-pawn, plus you are threatening to take on c3, so they are going to do something about this. Probably queen c2 or queen b3, doesn't matter. So you go b6, bishop b7, rook g8 in the near future, provided you don't hang your h7 pawn, right? So you will need to play something like f5, and then you just put more pressure along this diagonal if white castles short. And if you want to oversimplify things, sometimes you can even play knight e5, wanting to take. If pawn to e3 is played, well and good, you mess up their pawn structure as well. And then play pawn to b6, whatever you want to do. Anyways, again pawn to d4, e6, and then white plays c4, then you go pawn to c5. Pre-movers won't have time to think about pawn to d5 because they just don't expect you to go c5 so soon. So they play knight c3, the move that we're looking at. And now what you want to do is just to take. You see, actually there's a way you can make white reconsider his plans. If you want to stick to our main plan of putting your bishop on f6 and then your knight on g6, you can give white one more time to play d5 by starting with bishop e7. Not objectively the best move, but just a strategic move. And now you can see the top played move in the Lichess database is pawn to d5, right? Which we wanted to see at first. And after this is when you can take. So that after c takes, now you put your bishop on f6. Sometimes what you can do before playing bishop f6 is to go pawn to d6. You can see the top played move is pawn to e4 in this position, after which you can now go bishop f6. And after knight f3, the top played move, you can get rid of your light squared bishop as soon as you can if you want to, or stick to our plan, knight e7. Say bishop d3 is played. Now you go knight g6. Look at what I was showing you yesterday. Say castle short, and now this is when you castle short. But anyways, let's just get rid of our light squared bishop as I emphasized on. After h3, you just take, pop, and after queen takes, now you can easily castle short or play knight e5 or knight bd7. Actually, I like knight bd7 here. And what did we see yesterday, you guys? Remember, this is the position where we saw that the top played move in this position is bishop f4. Why? I mean, after that, you can just take that bishop, and after queen takes, now you can safely castle short without having to worry about any loss of material. Oh! You're looking at queen takes d6? Let them take. And this is where you say, good boy. Because now, you know, the queen is trapped. Anyways, so this is just a trick that you can also try if you really wanted your opponent to play pawn to d5. After knight c3, you can also test their patience by simply going bishop e7, kind of a prophylactic move, waiting for pawn to d5. And then you take. Now wait a second. The problem of taking immediately is that white may take back with the knight. They don't always take back with the pawn, okay? For example, knight takes. What do? Well, since it's a minor piece that is sitting on d5, our plan will be somehow a sheer waste of time. After all, white will take our bishop and force us to take with our g-pawn. So just go knight f6 here. It's not much of a stretch. Challenging this knight, right? They are going to take your dark squared bishop, after which you take back with the queen. Again, I kind of like this because one, it changes the structure of the normal queen's pawn game, where white has a pawn on d4 and the possibility of going knight e5 in the near future. These are the moves we don't want to see. So you get it. From here, it will be easier to continue. You will play knight c6, pawn to d6, castle short, put your rook on d8, even play pawn to d5, by the way, once your rook is on d8, just to open up the center. Anyway, just like I said, if you still want to play the game plan or the system that I recommended in part 1, again, it's fine, you can do that. For example, after d4, you can still go e6. And say after white plays pawn to c4, you go pawn to c5. Again, if they pre-move knight c3, you can give them one more chance to see this move d5. So you go bishop e7, and maybe even by this time, white is going to pre-move knight f3. because they thought you were gonna take. So let's see the move. Bishop kind of throws away the advantage, but the idea is if white takes, you just take on c3, making them, double up their pawns like this. This is very much okay, by the way. But logically speaking, once you notice that white is not interested to play pawn to d5 or pawn takes, for example, even here, if they play something like pawn to e3, which is, by the way, the top late move, well, you can try to give them one more chance to play pawn to d5 or take. So you go knight e7, because after they take or play pawn to d5, you know what to do. If they play bishop e2, you just go ahead and castle short. Because you know if they take, you're going to take their knight, leaving them with 3 isolated pawns along the c file, which is very bad for them. The moment you see them protecting their knight, this is when you may want to take on d4. Mostly they are going to take with the knight. Again, hold on. What did I say is the key move that you always have to play given a chance, or once the dust settles? Well, it is this move, pawn to d5. I always think of d5 when white tries to keep the position closed, and once the dust settles, because after a series of trades, you're just going to be ahead in development, with your queen on d5. Say bishop f3 here, you can retreat your queen or play queen d6. Knight b5 can be met with queen b4 check, by the way, trying to win the knight. So that knight should go back. And then you continue playing normal chess. Here I can even play bishop d7, knowing that white can take my b7 pawn. If this, I have queen b6. If knight a4, I'll just take. Back to our initial position, where we see the top late move, knight c3 on Lichess. Again, you have two options. Either to give your opponent one more chance to go d5, or just playing the standard move c takes d4. I highly recommend c takes d4 because, bishop e7 is just a strategic move. So after queen takes, you remember to go knight c6. Believe you me, with all your teeth, white will always play this move, queen d1. And this is when you go bishop b4, getting tempo. We saw that knight f3 is bad due to bishop takes c3, messing up white's pawn structure on the queen side. So what you will see most of your opponents doing is playing this move, bishop d2, and pinning their knight. But what can you do? Even though knight f6 is still playable, what I like doing here is to go pawn to d5. Please remember this move, you guys. After c takes d5, you take back with your pawn. Yes, this is an isolated pawn, but a very powerful one, by the way. It's going to be supported by our light squad bishop. Okay, let's say white plays pawn to e3, maybe stopping pawn to d4. And now this is when you go pop knight f6. If knight f3 is played, you simply castle short. They'll probably play bishop d3, but you always have pawn to d4. So it turns out the d4 pawn was not really an isolated pawn, because it was just one step away from being exchanged. So the key thing is to play an open game, which most d4 players don't like for real. So they're gonna take, and then you take back with your knight, and after knight takes d4, you take back with your queen, because what else do you know? And then here they'll play something like bishop e3. This is when you take on c3, pop, and if bc, by the way, you just take back with your queen with check. If bishop d2, you take the light squad bishop. If queen d2, you just take the free rook on a1. If white blocks the check with his fingers, you call the arbiter. And if king f1, you just go rook d8, pinning this bishop to the queen. And I don't know how white can save this game. You have bishop g4 coming next, or even knight d5, So this was all in the knight c3 line, which happens to be the top played move in the Lichess database. Just take and develop your knight with tempo, then go bishop b4. From there, chess will begin playing itself. Now, after you play pawn to c5, instead of d5 or knight c3, what if white plays knight f3? Again, assuming they don't see this move, because people just pre-move in the opening stage. The standard move is always c takes d4, playing in the style of the Sicilian defense. And if queen takes d4, you know what to do. You go knight c6. That's why you always see your opponents taking with the knight here. And now, since it's the knight which is on d4, knight c6 is cool, but knight f6 makes a lot of sense. And now after knight c3, because that's what they like doing, this is when you can go pawn to d5. Remember, the goal is always to open up the game. After pawn takes, of course, you take back with your knight. And if knight takes, you just take back with your queen. This is not what d4 players expect to see. They hate to play open games. say pawn to e3. Here I'll just keep my cool, play bishop e7. Even bishop b4 check is okay and trade off bishops. But I mean, by the way, after you play bishop e7, if white plays the top played move bishop e2 here, you can just take the g2 pawn. That was just a blunder. They may try, bishop f3, but you can just go queen h3 in this position, and you're doing great. You're just up a pawn. You will castle short, play bishop f6, and then pop, pop, oh, pop, pop. Just play as highlighted, you will be cool. Instead of bishop e2, if they play bishop b5 check first, or you just go bishop d7, of course they are going to take, because they want to castle short. So you just take back with your knight, and after castle short, you can also do the same and think of putting one of your rooks or your a rook on c8 to over control this open file like we do in the Sicilian defense. Let's look at another line after d4, e6, c4, pawn to c5, and instead of knight c3 or pawn to d5 or knight f3, say white plays pop, pawn to e3. Now in all these variations, if you want your opponent to see pawn to d5, you can take a bit of time, that's if you want to, and play bishop e7. But c takes d4 is always and will always be the standard move. So if I want to transpose the game back to what I know, I would play bishop e7 here. I'm just giving you an example. So you always have this bishop e7 move, giving white one more chance to reconsider his decision and play pawn to d5. After this, that's when you can take, and after c takes d5, you will play pawn to d6 and then follow the plan that I showed you in my yesterday's video or in the introduction of this video. Anyways, back to the initial position of our opening. If white plays pawn to e3 this time, just like I said, you have an option to go bishop e7, giving them one more chance to go d5, or play the standard move, c takes d4. Well, most likely they are going to take back, because what else can they do? I mean, that's just a move. And now, I want you guys to notice something. See what we've been doing in all these variations once the dust settles. Given a chance, you always want to strike first on the center. You always want to play d5 in these dubious sidelines. Yeah, moves like knight f6, bishop b4 check, knight c6, a6, d6 are all fine, but our goal is to open the position. So if white takes, we're going to take back with our queen. And after knight c3, we have so many things to do. Queen d6 is okay, queen a5 is okay, even queen d8, even bishop b4. So in this position, I love queen d6 because I don't want to exchange queens. Queen a5 may run into queen a4 check, and then white will exchange queens. So just go queen d6. After pawn to e3, pawn takes and pawn takes, you can also start with knight f6. They'll play knight c3, logical move, and then as always you play pawn to d5. If they take, you want to take back with your knight, and after knight takes, again you take back with your queen. This transposes back to the line that we already looked at with no knight on f3. So you have moves like bishop e7 or probably bishop d2 in this position. For example, if white plays knight f3, the top played move, you can also go bishop b4 check. Or first start with knight c6, white will play something like bishop e3, and then you go bishop b4 check. This is okay. They'll block like this, and then you just castle short. One of the middle game strategies you should get used to is breaking through with e5, so that after knight takes you take back and just play an open game. So in my future videos, we're going to look at other responses apart from the queen's gambit setup, like what if white plays d4 and after e6 they don't go pawn to c4? What if they play the London system? Can we still play pawn to c5? This will be our future lesson. I don't want to feed you a lot of stuff lest you may forget everything. Now, time for you to go and check out my new e5 defense course, which I have also linked in the comment section down below. And I'm glad to say so far it has received a lot of attention and people are getting it like crazy. So it's an opening response that you try against white's e4 opening. You're going to learn how to play against the Scotch, the Ruy Lopez, the Bishop's opening, 3 Knights opening, the 4 Knights game, the Vienna game, even the Italian game. So it's the complete e5 defense course that I just launched with my team. You better go and check it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.